Well, I think it's a great opportunity for us to be able to share some of the things on our hearts at a time like this, when we are talking about bridging the gap. First of all, the issue is to identify what's really the gap. What is it that we are talking about? First of all, I want to probably talk about the cultural gap. You know, first of all, we have what I call the generational gap between the people, say, of my age, that have experienced certain things in life. And then you have the younger generation that think they know, but really they don't. And it's our responsibility to help the younger generation to come on board and understand what we've experienced that will form the foundation of moving forward. You know, a people without history is really a lost people. And when we talk of history, we're talking about the story of God's doing. What's God done in us, for us, and through us, as black people? Now, I cannot talk with any authority about black people in America, but I certainly know that God has done amazing things through the black people in Africa for the entire mankind. Let me just step back a little bit. You know, some people do not quite fully understand Africa in God's agenda. The first thing that we need to remember, the redemptive purpose of Africa goes all the way back to the day of Abraham. When God called Abraham out, Abraham took refuge in Africa. It was in Africa that Abraham sort of got into contact and began to get enlightened about the things of God. And many people do not understand that many things that we see today in the Bible, in the Scripture, have very solid foundation way back into Africa. Let me fast forward a little bit. When God wanted to bring the nation of Israel out of Egypt, let me just, before I go that route, many times when we think of the nation of Israel and their suffering in Egypt, we forget that Jacob came to Egypt on his own volition. In fact, they came and took refuge in Africa because of the famine in their land. They came down to Egypt. Joseph was already serving in Africa. We need to remember that. We need to remember Joseph was serving in Africa, in the house of Pharaoh. It was Pharaoh's daughter or Pharaoh's sister that took Moses out of the water. It was in Egypt that the sons of Jacob and their families took refuge. The redemptive purpose of Africa is very clear. And so when we are talking of bridging the gap, we need to go back as black people and remember our redemptive purpose. No matter what anyone says, it's the black man, it's the black race that will play the final card in the end time. Because the redemptive purpose of God is through the black man. When Jacob came with his few children and settled in Egypt for 400 years in Egypt, in Africa, and by the time they left Egypt, there were over 2 million people. Over 2 million people when they left Egypt. And they did not leave Egypt empty-handed. Listen, there's a falsehood that has been painted that Africa is poor. That's far from being the truth. That's far from being the truth. If you look at even the old, let's go back to the old time, leave alone now. When the children of Israel left under Moses, they went out with jewels, they went out with gold, they went, name it. Those guys left Africa loaded. The wealth of Africa is what the children of Israel walked out with. How can you tell me Africa is poor? As if that is not enough. Fast forward, years later, when Jesus Christ was born, we know for a fact, when that mad king Herod wanted to destroy the Savior of the world, where did Jesus take refuge? In Africa. Redemptive purpose of the black man. It was in Africa. The formative years of the life of the Savior of mankind was on the continent of Africa. The reason I'm saying this is that we as black people need to know our identity and be proud about our Africanness. You may be called a black American or African American or whatever it is, but African is African. And we need to go back to that identity, that Africanness in us, and be proud of it. In fact, wherever there is a black man, you need to play out your redemptive purpose. It is through you, the black man, that redemption comes to a community. You see, the devil is very smart, but he's not all-knowing. When you look at the continent of Africa, you look at the Africans, you look at the black men in America, the African American, you look at the Caribbeans, the blacks in the Caribbean, you look at the blacks who are in Europe, in England, in UK, for instance. Usually, we are the lower end of almost everything. And you wonder why. Is the black man cursed? Far from it. There is no black man which is cursed. The enemy has successfully played deception in our mind, with our mind, so that the black man doesn't see his uniqueness, his special purpose in God's agenda. The black man doesn't see his redemptive purpose in the community. Instead, the enemy has made us feel as though we are nothing. And we have believed the lie of the enemy, and we act as if they are nothing. Instead of being providers, we have become beggars. And things need to change. We need to change from that. And that can only change when we fully understand God's agenda for our life. Again, I come back forward and say, think that Jesus Christ was in Africa. That's where he took refuge for years. By the way, it's also important to remember that Moses' wife was an African. The woman who intervened to save Moses when God was about to destroy him. The same. For Joseph's wife was an African, as an African. We need to look at the gap that has been created, the falsehood that has made us feel as though we are nobodies. We are the worst of the people. We are not. We are not. I mean, I want to say, as a black man, as an African, I'm proud to be an African because I know my redemptive purpose in this life. God has raised me for a purpose. When you fast forward, come to the formation of the church, the early church, we know today the roles that key Africans played in ensuring that the church did not go astray. Think today of what we call the Nicene Creed, the creed that holds the church together. Africans were very instrumental in that. Think of this. Even if you step back a little bit, who was the one who helped carry the cross? Simon of Cyrene, an African. Listen, the bottom line is, as Africans, we need to be very proud of our Africanness, because there is a redemptive purpose for which God created the black man. And the sooner we realize it, the better for us, because no matter where God has planted us, for the black man in America, You need to play your redemptive purpose in America. America will be restored through the black man, not the white man. And I'm not being racist in any way. I'm just telling you that this is the truth, because that's why God raised the black man. Look at the end time things, and you will know that this is what's happening. Africa is not poor. For goodness sake, Africa is not poor. Nigeria alone can produce 50% of the gas requirement of the United States of America. Nigeria alone. Angola and Botswana, these are two countries in Africa. Their diamond reserve is more than half of the world's total diamond reserve. DRC Congo, we can say DRC Congo plus the rest of Africa has 50% of the total world gold deposit. You can't tell me Africa is poor. We need to rethink. We need to revisit our mind. And we will see how God has uniquely blessed us. So when we are thinking of bridging the gap, it's about helping us to refocus ourselves on God's agenda and know what is it that we need to do to play our part at a time like this. So that's my thought. Thank you.